Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of State of Mind. This will be part 32, the second half to chapter 20. They walked through a set of double doors built into the wall of the testing arena and found multiple tables of refreshments and snacks. His class immediately broke for the water coolers. It was a hot day after all. Izuku joined them, grabbing a bottle of water and moving to sit at a lone bench lining the wall. He sighed and slouched into it, pulling a pouch of acetaminophen from his belt. "Head hurt?" Shoto asked as he sat next to him. "Mm-hmm," Izuku responded, taking the medicine. He'd gotten better with storing things in his mindscape, but that many people at once and running and dodging with them all in it had stressed his brain out. "Here," Shoto said, handing over a small plastic-wrapped cake. "You should eat something, too. I doubt you had more than a granola bar for breakfast." Izuku blinked at his friend. "Wow," he said, taking the offering. "You know me so well." Shoto shrugged as Izuku began nibbling on the cake and sipping his water. Soon enough, the rest of Class 1A joined them, Kirishima organizing an obnoxiously loud plus-ultra chant that had most of the rest that had passed the first trial either sighing or turning away in irritation. Izuku watched the people trickling in, his brow furrowing when a girl in a black bodysuit joined, one of the last of the 100. "Izuku, you okay?" Shoto asked him from his side, on the bench. Izuku blinked, watching as the girl moved toward the refreshments. "That girl's aura is familiar. Izuku pressed a hand absently to his cheek, his brain struggling almost painfully, and it felt like there was something on the tip of his tongue. "It's nothing. I'm okay," he sighed, and finished his water bottle, despite feeling slightly nauseated at the sight of the girl's aura. "Please direct your attention to the monitors lining the walls," a voice from above abruptly said, and Izuku stood, crushing the now empty water bottle in his hand and looking up. "The field." Izuku frowned. "Why are—" An explosion suddenly tore a building in half, and Izuku jolted backward, heart skipping a beat. Debris began crumbling, buildings falling, and fire spreading. "The next step will be the last one," the voice droned on. "We will have you all perform rescue exercises as bystanders in this disaster site. We will assume that those of you who passed the first test have received your provisional licenses and test how well you can carry out suitable rescue procedures." Izuku swallowed thickly. It looks like... Izuku was spun around to face Shoto, and his breath rushed out in a short gasp. "Don't think about it," Shoto said, his vivid, heterochromatic eyes staring deep into Izuku's. "It's not Kamino. It's just a simulation. You can do this." Izuku found himself nodding, taking deep breaths to control the shaking that he hadn't even noticed started up. Yeah, you're right." Izuku cleared his throat. "Let's fucking do this." Shoto snorted and patted his shoulder before releasing. "Yes, let's." "The people from the HUC have dressed up as injured victims and are on standby throughout the disaster site. We will now have you all carry out their rescue. In addition, we will score your rescue based on points, and if you have more points than the benchmark at the end of the exercises, then you pass." Several of his other class members came up to Izuku then, their steps audible, making sure Izuku knew that they were approaching. "You okay, Izuku?" Ida asked softly from his side. Izuku nodded, raising determined eyes, his fists clenched and his arms crossed over his chest. "I've come too far to quit or to be led astray by fear. Izuku narrowed his eyes. "Victory is mine." Next to him, both Ida and Shoto blinked in surprise. "Well, glad you're feeling confident," Ida said with a smile. Izuku glanced up when he caught sight of the Shiketsu students approaching Kachan. He listened in, frowning. "That bald guy's aura is weird," he said. There were so many colors, all swimming together in a weird, volatile dance. "He keeps glaring at me," Shoto answered, taking a step toward him as their small group turned to leave. He paused, right behind the larger student, and Izuku followed him, stopping slightly behind. "Hey, you with the shaved head, did I do something to you?" he demanded. The boy slowly turned around, eyes slitted. "Well, I'm sorry, son of Endeavor, but—" "Nope." "I'm gonna stop you right there," Izuku snarled, stepping in front of Shoto, his fingertips twitching in anger. He attempted to take a deep breath, to still the rising tide threatening to sweep through him. "He has a name, and I promise that it's not Son of Endeavor. Shoto wants as little relation to that flaming pile of garbage as I'm sure you do." From behind him, Shoto snorted, and, towering above him, the boy named Inasa frowned down at him. Izuku took another deep breath. "If you think you can come here, trying to get your provisional hero license with a judgmental and frankly shit attitude, then you've got another thing coming. Whatever you've got against Shoto, it's obvious from how you began talking to him that it's not against Shoto at all, is it?" Inasa blinked, appearing to question himself. No one likes that second-place bastard. His civilian casualty count is public record, as well as how he treats bystanders. So use that bald, thick head of yours and imagine how he treats his own children." Inasa paled, his tongue flicking forward to wet his lips nervously. Before he could add anything, Izuku straightened, resisting the urge to punch the man in the face. "Talk it out, like men," Izuku hissed. "You're trying to be a hero. It's time to start acting like it. Besides, however bad you think you have it, I guarantee Shoto had it worse. Don't judge people before you even really meet them." "Izuku," Shoto said from behind him. "It's fine. You didn't need to." "No, he's right." Inasa sighed. "I still don't like you, but I don't know you yet. Perhaps we can work together to get our licenses." "We'll see," Izuku said in place of Shoto. "If I see anything out of line, I will put you in a place I promise you don't want to be in." Izuku lifted his bare right hand, flexing his fingers where Inasa could see them. It was then that the walls of the room separated, falling to the ground just like the other walls had done before. "Due to heavily damaged roads, the first group of rescue workers has been delayed. Until they arrive, the heroes in the area will lead the rescue efforts. Save as many lives as you can." The 100 students that had passed the first exam all took off together, Inasa shooting up into the air, all too eager to leave Izuku and Shoto behind. Izuku's anger began to fade, to be replaced with exhilaration and determination. "The best way to get through this is to treat it like an actual situation," Izuku said, trying to forget what had just happened and focus on the situation ahead. "We should all work together, like we would have to do if there was really civilian lives on the line. This isn't about doing better than anyone else, it's about helping as many people as possible." Ida made a noise of agreement from where he was running at Izuku's side. "I agree. I can help lead the large group, get everyone to work as a team as much as possible." Izuku nodded as Ida began shouting, directing everyone to do certain tasks. Izuku himself slid to a stop when a small but loud voice caught his attention, a harsh weeping that reached his ears. Izuku searched the direction the voice came from, and he realized he could feel the presence of someone there. He immediately began moving toward it, Shoto and several other classmates close behind. He came to a lip in the rock where it plummeted, broken pieces of concrete scattered about. A child sat at the bottom, crying and yelling about his grandpa being crushed. Izuku scanned the area, his eyes closed. "I can sense someone there," he said, pointing. "Ochako, Ashido, Shinso, can you guys handle it?" "You can leave it to us," Ashido yelled and jumped to it. In the meantime, Izuku crouched in front of the boy, ignoring the way his stomach curdled at the sight of the blood on the kid's face, even if it was fake. "My name is Nova," he said in the most reassuring voice he could muster. "I'm here to help. Can you walk?" "No," the boy wailed. Izuku noted that his voice was husky, either with panic or there was something wrong with his lungs. "It's all right," Izuku murmured. "I can carry you, and your grandpa will be fine. Everything is going to be okay. How is your vision? Can you see all right?" The boy sniffled, but nodded as Izuku gently lifted him into his arms. "Good, that's great." Izuku lowered his voice, leaning in close to Shoto. "Shoto, there's another person buried in the rubble a few yards east, behind that chunk of bridge." "On it," Shoto responded before rushing off. Izuku took off running after that, keeping the boy still in his arms to avoid jostling him. "We're almost there," he reassured him. "It's going to be all right." The two of them arrived at a hastily but well-constructed triage. Izuku stopped when an unfamiliar girl approached him. Izuku kept a hold of the boy as he went over the facts. "Shallow head wound, hitched breathing, responds coherently to questions." The girl leaned forward, spreading the boy's eyelid to check his pupil. "Yeah, he looks fine. Take him over there, please," she commanded and left to tend to someone else. "Yes, ma'am," Izuku said, and did as he was told, and then rushed off to find someone else, completely focused on the task at hand, that he didn't notice he was alone. Alone, except for the presence trailing behind him. Izuku found the other presence he had noted earlier when he'd been heading toward the triage setup, an adult stuck beneath a large piece of rubble. "Brace yourself. I'm going to move it. Please tell me if anything begins to hurt worse," Izuku told the woman as he lowered his fingers below the cement, green lightning flickering over his body as he began forcing it upward. "I'll help," a voice suddenly said, and the girl in the bodysuit he'd noticed from before was suddenly next to him. Izuku flinched, the girl's familiar aura overtaking his own from her nearness. Where did he know it from? They lifted the cement and pushed it to the side, eyes narrowing as the girl bent to check on the victim. "What are you doing, Izu? Help me out," she said, voice sultry, and Izuku paled, all the blood draining from his face. He knew that tone of voice, that high-pitched, obsessive note. "No, no, 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 no." "Aw, you found me out, didn't you?" Toga pouted, then brightened. "That means you know me so well. We're connected, Izu. I've missed you so much." She was wearing the skin of whomever that Shiketsu student was. Izuku hoped they were okay. Toga abruptly danced back, flinging a blade at Izuku which he was easily able to dodge with One for All sparking along his skin. All the hair on his arm standing up. He felt like a lightning rod, like a piece of living electric, all tense muscles and short breaths. Izuku moved, grabbing the actor and jumping behind the block of cement he'd moved. He deposited the woman. "If you have a phone, call for heroes. That girl is not a student. She's from the League of Villains." The woman gasped, eyes wide. "Don't worry." Izuku straightened, keeping his gaze on Toga as she advanced toward him, grinning with sharp teeth. "I'll keep you safe. Just call for help, please." Okay," the actor answered with a small voice, tugging out her phone as she took in the student in front of her, standing tall, not showing an ounce of fear. She felt like nothing could go wrong. Izuku jumped back over the cement, lunging for Toga, trying to grab her to just get her out of the equation. He couldn't be taken again. He wouldn't go. Panic was tugging at the edges of his mind, dancing along his lungs, trying to force him back to the bar, to Toga hurting him. So much pain. Toga leaped out of the way and threw another blade at him. This one skimmed Izuku's shoulder, but the tough fabric of his hero costume deflected it. He jumped into a flip when another one flew at him, lightly scraping his cheek, right across the scars she'd given him before. Where was she even getting those blades? Her bodysuit was so tight. Izuku propelled himself toward her, trying to reach her, lava rain bursting into existence from his anxiety and depression. It slowed her retreat, but she only laughed giddily, whipping around to swipe at her dropped blades. "Nova," an achingly familiar voice said, and Izuku gasped in relief, but didn't let his guard down. Aizawa swung down to land next to him, dropping from the bleachers where he had been sitting to watch the test go down. In front of them, Toga's skin suit fell away as Erasure was activated, revealing her true form. "You suck," she grumbled. "I wanted to play with Izu some more, give him some more pretty scars." More heroes were running toward them, and Toga sighed, a purple portal forming behind her. "Guess it wasn't meant to be. This time. At least I got some of your blood, though." She grinned at the blade she'd swiped from the ground. "I'll see you soon, Izu," she waved girlishly, stepping backward before disappearing into the swirling mass. Izuku stumbled to a stop from where he had been trying to grab her. Aizawa latched onto his shoulder, holding him in place. Izuku stared, unmoving, at where she had been. "Izuku, she's gone. It's all right." Izuku turned his head slowly. His spine felt like metal, refusing to bend. Aizawa, please, get me somewhere private." Aizawa seemed to understand because he nodded, his hand tightening on Izuku's shoulder to guide him away from the heroes that were gathering, one of them helping the civilian. Aizawa gestured to them to leave him and Izuku alone for a moment. Aizawa pulled him away, behind several layers of debris, heading for a mostly safe-looking area. Izuku's knees gave out before he reached it, and Aizawa caught him, pulling him up and into his arms to carry him the rest of the way, setting him against a large piece of rubble. Izuku was barely breathing. His hands formed into claws and tugged at his hero costume. He bent down, flinching away from Aizawa when he tried to grab his hands. "Izuku, come on." Izuku's guardian was frowning, trying his best to help. Izuku's mouth was numb, filled with cotton, his tongue sandpaper. He shook his head, falling forward even more. Aizawa caught him, tugging him back against the rock. Izuku's feet kicked weakly. He was trying so hard to control it. He could feel the panic attack trying to rip him apart by the seams, lighting up his veins with pure fire. Hit after hit, straight to his heart. His chest was tight and painful, and his lungs felt like shriveled-up shopping bags. His head slammed back of its own accord, hitting the rock debris behind him, and Aizawa cursed. "Izuku, you've got to breathe." Izuku wanted to yell at him that he knew that, but it wasn't that easy. Aizawa wrapped his arms around Izuku gently, his shoulder protecting Izuku's head when it bounced back, his panic attack making his muscles react and jerk. He then took Izuku's hand in his own and held it against his own chest. "Breathe with me." It was just like so many times before. Izuku failed to control his breathing, and his guardian continued to help Izuku, never giving up until Izuku eventually sagged, utterly spent, the panic attack dissipating. His breathing was still forced, barely there, but it was finally even. "Are you back?" Aizawa asked, gruff voice soft as he pulled a band-aid from his utility belt to place on Izuku's scratched cheek. Izuku didn't even bother trying to talk. Speech was not currently something that he was capable of, and he knew it. What kind of hero was he? How was he ever supposed to get his provisional license if he couldn't even face one villain without falling into hysterics? "Izuku, I know what you're thinking. You acted well. You protected the civilian and tried to apprehend the villain ahead of anything else." Aizawa met his eyes. "You did exactly what a hero would do, and against someone who tortured you no less. Just about anyone would have a breakdown after that. But you remained strong, until help arrived." Izuku didn't argue, only nodding, allowing Aizawa to retract his arms and help him stand up. His heart still hurt, like it was working too hard to pump blood throughout his body. He could feel every single beat, painfully. His hands shook, viciously. Let's get you with the rest of your classmates." Aizawa rubbed his back comfortingly. Izuku swallowed and nodded, allowing Aizawa to guide him once again. They headed to where all 100 of the students were gathered in front of a huge screen on a stand. He guessed no one had noticed what had happened, Toga having left by the time the actual test ended. Aizawa noted Shoto waiting for him at the back of the group, eyes narrowing when he caught sight of them. "Are you going to be okay for a bit? I need to go speak with someone." Izuku nodded, and Aizawa sighed, patting his shoulder and walking away. Izuku erased the rest of the distance between him and Shoto, and the boy gently grasped Izuku's arms. "What happened?" Shoto demanded, eyes flicking over him as if searching for wounds. Tears came unbidden to Izuku's eyes, and he heaved in a shaky breath. Shoto froze, his eyes lifting back up, searching Izuku's own with uncertainty. "Izuku?" Izuku shook his head, forcing his breath to stay even despite how much it didn't seem to want to. "Okay, everyone. Thank you all for your hard work," a voice suddenly said from the stand, and Shoto's head shot up. Izuku took the moment to wipe at his eyes with shaky hands. He clenched his right hand into a fist, eyeing the stump of his missing index finger with derision. "I will reveal the results, but first, I will tell you about the scoring system." Izuku tuned the man out. There was no way he passed, not after Toga herself from the League of Villains had managed to sneak up on him. Izuku was so pointless. "Izuku, you're shaking really hard." Shoto was grabbing his wrists, pulling them. Izuku hadn't even noticed he'd been chewing on his nails. "Something bad happened." Shoto trailed off when Izuku nodded. Izuku suddenly noticed Shoto was back in his uniform, and he wished he was too. He wanted his gloves back. He wanted the comfort they provided. He wanted Wink. Fuck, he wanted Wink so much. "Anyway, the names of those who passed are in syllabary order." Izuku didn't bother looking up at those words. He knew he hadn't passed. "Izuku," Shoto's voice said after a brief moment, and he looked up, wishing his hair wasn't braided so that he had some sort of barrier between him and the world. "Izuku, both of our names are up there. We passed." Izuku took one step back, eyes huge. Then he turned to the side and vomited, stomach rolling. "Shit!" another student exclaimed, backing away from Izuku. A hand grasped Izuku's arm, while the other rubbed his back while he retched. Izuku finished, and a napkin was pressed into his hand. He wiped his mouth and straightened, his entire body shaking. Shoto pulled him away from the puddle of vomit and looked at him with worry. A man in a suit went by and handed them both a piece of paper. Around him, people were mentioning numbers, 72, 56, 80, 77. Izuku looked hesitantly down at his own, blinking away the blurriness obscuring his vision. His eyes scanned the page until he reached the bottom. Izuku's knees gave out, and Shoto grunted, catching him beneath the armpits, unable to halt his descent completely, but slowing it down. "Izuku, what? What is it?" Shoto was panicking, concern marring his features. "As one of you may have noticed, we had our first ever perfect score for this exam. Well done to that participant," the man, Mara, voiced before going on about their new responsibilities. "Izuku, did you—" Shoto looked down at Izuku's hand as he shifted the paper so that he could see. A big, bold 100 sat at the bottom, his score total. "Wow," Shoto whispered, eyes widening. "You're amazing. You know that, right?" A shadow fell over them, and Izuku glanced up. "He's right, kid. The lady you protected, the HUC member. She vouched for you and gave you extra points, putting you at a perfect score. She said you had the makings of an amazing hero." Aizawa smiled down at him. "The circumstances might not have been ideal, but you did an amazing job, problem child." I'm proud of you." "What happened?" Shoto asked, looking up at their teacher. Aizawa sighed, his expression turning serious. "We had an intruder. Toga from the League of Villains. Izuku drove her away." Shoto looked at Izuku aghast. "I left for 5 fucking minutes, Izuku." Izuku glanced at his friend, almost bashfully. Shoto shook his head. "That's it. I'm never leaving you again. Consider me a permanent fixture in your life. You attract trouble." "Shit, Izuku, I was gone for 5 minutes." Aizawa chuckled as Shoto buried his face in one hand, sighing heavily. Izuku was on the bus, sitting next to Shoto, his knees up against the seat in front of him. His shiny new license had been shoved into his bag, almost as if he was afraid to look at it. He'd taken a picture of it to send to Yagi and Mike, and then hastily hidden it from view. It didn't feel real. It all felt like he was going to wake up and he'd be back with his father and Kachan. Or alone. The bus took them back to the dorms where everyone set to work taking showers and making food or whatever. Izuku bathed quickly and then forewent dinner entirely to collapse into his nook with Wink. She had missed him too and cuddled against his chest, head-butting his chin while the colors of the stars washed over them. "Today was so long," Izuku whispered to Wink, and she craned her head up to level her eye on him, slitted pupil dilated almost completely in the darkness. "I got a perfect score on the exam, if you can believe it. I certainly don't." Izuku went quiet for a moment, just petting her soft fur. "I'm tired, Wink. I'm just so tired." Izuku closed his eyes, shoving his face into Wink's back and allowing himself to fall asleep. He stood in a desolate wasteland of cracked, broken earth. Skeletal, petrified trees reached arm-like branches up toward the rolling, violent sky. Funnel clouds in the distance tore across the landscape soundlessly, ripping up the dry ground and leaving wakes of bleak nothing. They were dark and ravenous, foreboding. The sky was black and gray, heaving with green lightning, flickering in and out, crossing between and through rolling, seething storm clouds. Izuku stood beneath it all, wide, horrified eyes taking none of it in, only seeing the terrifying sight before him, only seeing what waited, what sat in the broken world as if it had always been there. The entire air seemed to vibrate with malevolence, a broken ballad of hurt and fear. The clouds suddenly pulsed angry, and the rain poured down, red. It collided with Izuku's skin, and he fell back with a shout. It was so hot. It was so hot. Izuku could only watch in horror as his muscle was revealed, tendons standing in stark relief against bone, before that too was destroyed. He fell onto his back, and the rain desiccated his abdominal flesh, viscera spilling out onto the ground around him. Izuku was consumed completely by pure agony, his body melting into the ground, polluting the earth with his hot, fresh blood, as he screamed silently, tears pouring down his face until his eyeballs themselves streamed down his cheeks. Izuku banged a hand against the ground, and it busted apart, pieces of his flesh flying off in every direction. Izuku screamed, again and again, and, "Izuku, wake up!" Izuku jerked upward, a scream clawing its way out of his throat as he scrambled backward. His back hit the wall, and his canopy blasted outward with a burst of air and crackling electricity. His hands clawed at his face before they were grabbed and held in front of him. Izuku resisted, yanking on his hands and kicking out, yelling incoherently. As if speaking from the end of a tunnel, a voice reached Izuku, and he slowly stopped struggling, the familiarity of the voice soothing him. He allowed himself to fall forward into open arms, his entire body shaking. "Sorry," another voice whispered. "I couldn't get him to respond to me." "It's fine. I've got him now," Shoto answered, wrapping his arms around Izuku. "I'll get Aizawa. The second voice that Izuku now recognized as Shinso's said. Izuku shook his head rapidly, his forehead digging into Shoto's collarbone. No Aizawa. Izuku shook his head again. Aizawa needed his sleep, especially after what had happened at the provisional exam. There had probably been so much paperwork. Besides, Izuku just wanted... Well, he didn't actually know what he wanted. There was some more talking, which was lost to Izuku as his mind raced through what he'd seen. His skin crawling, his fingers twitching with the urge to scratch the feeling away. All for One's words kept echoing in Izuku's head, and he couldn't stop them. Quirks that are fueled by their own user's pain never end well. What he'd seen. Izuku, Shoto asked softly. Was this brought on by seeing that girl? Izuku shuddered, burying his face in Shoto's chest. He could still feel the rain on his skin. He could still feel the pain it wrought. Shoto sighed, rubbing his back, just holding him, even when Wink left her hiding spot and climbed between them to lean against Izuku's waist. Neither of them fell asleep again after that, and Izuku still didn't speak as Shoto helped him up and led him downstairs to the kitchen. Despite it being earlier than usual, Bakugo was cooking. Probably stress cooking, now that Shoto thought about it, since he was the only one that had failed the exam from their class. Strangely, though, he didn't say anything when Shoto guided Izuku to a seat, only setting a small bowl of rice in front of him. I could hear you screaming from down here, you damn nerd, the angry blonde said, scowling. Izuku nudged the bowl aside and laid his forehead against the wood of the table. Eat your food, Deku, Bakugo snarled. Bakugo, Shoto growled. Don't think that I didn't notice that he didn't eat anything yesterday, Bakugo responded with a hiss. Why would you? Because he feels guilty. Izuku spoke up for the first time since the exam, his voice a rasp, torn up from screaming. Guilty? Shoto frowned, glancing at Bakugo, whose face twisted. Whatever. Starve yourself to death. I don't give a fuck. Bakugo stormed away. Izuku melted into the table, practically a puddle against the wood. Shoto sighed heavily and opened the fridge to get Izuku a drink. If you can, you should eat something. He is right about that. You threw up anything you ate yesterday. Izuku grimaced at that reminder. He didn't want to eat. The thought made his stomach curdle uncomfortably. How about something less heavy? Shoto said, and Izuku nodded against the table. The boy took the bowl of rice away and then made Izuku a simple broth, placing it in front of him carefully. Izuku sat up and hesitantly began drinking it, his stomach almost immediately beginning to complain, gurgling loudly. Do you want to talk about what happened? Shoto offered, sitting down with a bowl of rice to eat, so that it wouldn't go to waste. Izuku wiped his mouth and set the bowl down, staring into it, a haunted expression crossing his features. I don't really see my own mindscape, he finally said, and Shoto paused in his chewing. That wasn't what he'd expected. I've only seen a dark area, really. Nothing like what people have described to me. Izuku murmured. Your mindscape was far from dark. Shoto remembered the place he'd been sent to during the training camp when Izuku had been trying to strengthen his quirk. He could remember the vibrant red grass and the brilliant yellow sky, the trees that were all different shades of neon, so bright and full of life that they were difficult to look at. Izuku had bowed his head, sniffling. I saw... In my dream, I saw... It wasn't... Take your time, Izuku, Shoto reassured, frowning. What could Izuku have possibly seen of his own quirk that would upset him like this? Shoto had expected the nightmare to have been something triggered by seeing Toga and remembering what had happened during his capture. Izuku swallowed and looked up, watery pools of jade, looking at Shoto. Shoto, I saw a... Hey, guys, Shinso suddenly said, walking into the room, one hand held behind his back. Izuku flinched, almost knocking his bowl over. Sorry, Shinso shrugged. Can I see Wink? I brought something for her. Izuku nodded. She comes to whistles. His voice was shaky, and his face pale. Oh, really? That is neat, Shinso said and gave a short whistle. Wink leapt off Izuku's lap and pranced over to Shinso's feet. Wow. Shinso bent down to pet her, murmuring to her. You're so perfect, Wink. So beautiful, so intelligent. Such a queen in a world of peasants. Shoto snorted at that, watching as Shinso bent down to pick her up, pulling a blanket from behind his back and beginning to wrap the small cat in it. Wait, wait. Shoto narrowed his eyes. Is that blanket a tortilla? Shinso looked up with a proud grin. Yes. Yes, it is. Izuku drank the last of his broth as Shinso finished wrapping up Wink and then held her up for them to see. A burrito, he proclaimed. Izuku choked on his broth, hacking as it trickled out of his nose, and Shoto blinked at him. Is this a regular thing with you now? Is broth going to be the cause of your demise? Oh my gosh! Ashido screamed from the common room when she caught sight of Wink in Shinso's hands. Screaming again, she vaulted the couch, whipping her phone up for pictures. Izuku smiled, clearing his throat and relaxing into his chair. Shoto breathed a sigh of relief to see Izuku feeling better. But, unbidden, his mind went back to what Izuku had been getting ready to say. What had he seen? All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 20 of State of Mind. Chapter 21 will be up next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one. I really like how the author did this provisional licensing exam. The fact that Shoto was able to pass this time because Izuku stood up to Inasa ahead of time before that part of the exam even started. The fact that Aizawa swoops in to help out when it comes to Toga, and that Izuku manages to pass with flying colors despite thinking that he didn't. So there's a lot of really cool things that took place, I think, in how the author's kind of crafting Izuku throughout this fic. So drop your thoughts, comments, reactions below. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.